Alright, number one, state the domain and the range. So for domains, make sure you list all the x values, do it from least to greatest, and don't repeat if there's any repetition. So the smallest one is -3. Then we have 0. Looks like they're all in order already. 2, 4, and 5. There's the domain. For the range, we do the same thing, but with the y's. So 0, 2, 4, 5, 2. So 0, 2, 4, 5. Don't repeat the 2, it's already in my list, so I don't need it again. There's the domain and there's the range. When they say determine if it's a function, look at the domain. Think back to the domain. Did we have any repetition? No, there wasn't. There was repetition in the range, but not in the domain. If there's none in the domain, then yes, it is a function. Okay, number 2. Same thing, domain. Click the smallest one was -1, then 1, 3, 5, and 7. There was no repetition, so this is a function. Range. Looks like -4 is the smallest, then -2, then 0, 2, and 4. No repetition there. For number 3, evaluate f of 4. So f of 4, go ahead and plug 4 in place of x. So it reads -3 times 4 squared plus 2 order of operations. You need to square first. So 4 squared is 16. -3 times 16 is -48. Then add the 2 to get -46. F of -3, you take -3 times, and then plug in -3 and square it, plus 2 order of operations. Square first, -3 squared is 9. So it says -3 times +9 plus 2, -3 times +9 is -27. Add 2, we get -25. Number 5, we have -3 times 2w squared plus 2. Square first, keep the -3 there. 2w squared. 2w times 2w is 4w squared. So you have to square the 2 and the w both, and you have plus 2. Now do the multiplication. -3 times 4w squared is -12w squared. Plus 2. We do not have common terms or like terms, so I can't do anything else. That's your answer. Okay, number 6. Find your x and y intercepts. Find your x-intercept. You know that your y-coordinate will be 0 for an x-intercept, and for a y-intercept, your x-coordinate will be 0. So you'll plug in accordingly. So take the equation. When you want the x-intercept, plug 0 in for y. So it would read 4x equals, and then 8 times 0 is just 0, so it can go away. So you get equals -16. 4x equals -16. Divided by 4, you get -4 for an x-intercept. -4 is 0. For y-intercept, plug 0 in for the x. So 4 times 0 is 0. You get 0 on the left side of the equation equals 8y minus 16. To solve that, I'd probably add the 16 over. So I have 16 equals 8y. I would divide by y to get 2. I have a y-intercept of 2. Then you put those on the graph. So your x-axis is always the horizontal one. Go to -4 on the x-axis. So -1, -2, -3, -4. Put a point. Your y-axis is +2, go to the y-axis to +2, put a point, and then you just connect the dots, and you have the graph for that equation. Number 7 and 8, they ask you if it's linear. To be linear, has to be in the you have to be able to write in the form y equals mx plus b. Number 8, yes, it's f of x, which is the same as y, equals -2x plus 9. That is that mx plus b form, so that is linear. But when you look at 7, the x and the y are both squared, so that's not linear. That's actually a circle if you were to graph it. Number 9, find the slope. So we're going to use our slope formula. Let me write it down here for you. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So negative 4 minus 7, or negative 6 minus negative 4. Negative 4 minus 7 is negative 11. Negative 6 minus negative 4, that's like plus 4. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. We have double negatives. They'll cancel each other out. We'll get positive 11 over 2, and that fraction doesn't simplify, so there it is. Number 10. I'll do 8 minus negative 13 over 17 minus 17. Minus a negative is like plus, so we get 21 over 0. Anytime you're dividing by 0, 0 is in the denominator, that is undefined, an undefined slope, also called no slope. No slope should not be confused with zero slope. There is a difference. Alright, number 11. Now we use point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So, number 11, y minus, the y sub 1 is the negative 5, equals your slope, which is negative 2, times x minus x1, which is the negative 3. The double negatives turn into positives. So now I have y plus 5 equals, and now distribute your negative 2, so distribute your slope. So negative 2x, and then negative 2 times positive 3 is negative 6. Make sure you already had the double negatives turned into a positive there, so we don't mess this up. Then subtract your 5. We get y equals negative 2x minus 11. Number 12, we have to first find our slope. 8 minus negative 4 over 0 minus negative 2. Double negatives turn into positives, so it's 8 plus 4 is 12. 0 plus 2 is 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So now I know my slope. And we have two ordered pairs, but look at this one right here. I like the 0 that's in this one. The 0 is in the x spot, which means this is the y-intercept. That's actually b. If you recognize that, you can jump right to your answer. Otherwise, go ahead and do your point slope form, but I would choose the one that has the 0 in it. So if we do that, y minus 8 equals your slope of 6 times x minus x1, which is 0. Y minus 8 equals, distribute 6 times x, and then that just 6 times 0 is just 0, so I'm left with that. So then let's add the 8 over. Y equals 6x plus 8 is my answer. Number 13. We're going to be parallel to that line, so we'll have the same slope. Don't use that equation anymore. Y minus 2 equals 4 times x minus 1. Distribute the slope, 4x minus 4. Add the 2. Y equals 4x minus 2. Next, we have to be perpendicular. So if we're going to be perpendicular, we're going to do the opposite reciprocal slope. So the opposite reciprocal of 2/3 is negative 3/2. Sorry for the delay. So we're going to use negative 3/2 for our slope. So now we plug in into point slope form. Y minus 5 equals negative 3/2 times x minus negative 3. Double negatives becomes positive. Distribute the slope. Negative 3/2 x. Then negative 3/2 times positive 3, that's negative. That's 3 over 1. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 1 is 2, so we get 9 over 2. Then I have to add 5. Oops, I didn't mean to cross that out. But y equals negative 3/2 x. Then I have this negative 9/2 where I'm adding 5. Maybe off to the side I'll do that. Negative 9/2 plus 5 over 1. But I want a common denominator of 2, so I would multiply 5 over 1, both the top and the bottom, by 2's to get 10 over 2. Now negative 9 halves plus 10 halves. Negative 9 plus 10 is 1, positive 1, so I get plus 1 over your common denominator of 2. So 1 half. So y equals negative 3 halves x plus 1 half. Let's go to the back page. In 2.7, you want to remember that we talked about constant, we talked about linear, we talked about absolute value, we talked about quadratic. What does each one look like? Constant is a horizontal line. Linear is a line but not horizontal. Absolute value is a V. Quadratic is a parabola or a U shape. So in 15 and 16, they just want us to identify which type it is. So 15 is a parabola, so that's quadratic. The second one, it's a V. It's upside down, but it's still a V, so it's absolute value. Then in number 16, they're asking about these transformations. So there's this 3 that was subtracted. It's from the very end. It's outside of the square, so that's the k value. That's the vertical shift. This one shifts it down 3. Number 17, there's a negative at the very beginning, in front of the whole thing. That was the a value. So that does a reflection. It reflects it or flips it, if you prefer that word. And it reflects across the x-axis. Honestly, if you said it flips it, that's probably a good enough answer. I would accept it. Number 18, graph. Now we're getting into inequalities. So recall the x and y intercepts. This is standard form. Number 18 standard form. So I would probably like to find the x and y intercepts and graph it from there instead of putting it into slope-intercept form. So an x-intercept happens when the y value is 0. Y-intercept happens when the x value is 0. So for y-intercept, or x-intercept rather, plug in 0 for y. We're left with x, and you can pretend it's an equals now. X equals 6. 6 is your x-intercept. For the y-intercept, plug in 0 for x. We have negative 3y equals 6. Divide by negative 3, you get negative 2. So my x-intercept is 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to project it out past the end of the graph. Y-intercept is negative 2. Let's go ahead and connect the dots.
Can we close it?
This is an inequality. It's not equal to, so I have to use a dashed line. It's kind of like when we have an open circle, use a dashed line, and then I need to shade. I have to shade one side of the line versus the other. To check which side to shade, pick a point in order pair that's not on the line. So I'm going to pick 0, 0, because I like zeros. I'm going to plug it in the equation, test, and see if it's a solution. See if it fulfills that equation, that inequality. So 0 minus 3 times 0 is less than 6. The whole left side becomes 0. So you have to ask yourself, is 0 less than 6? Is that a true statement? Well, yes, it is. 0, 0 is a solution. It should be graphed. It's kind of above the line, so therefore everything above the line should be shaded. Number 19. Here we have an absolute value. There's this h value, that's the horizontal shift, and we do the opposite side, or the opposite direction. So see a negative 2, might think that's 2 to the left, but it's the opposite. It goes 2 to the right. So shift 2 to the right, there's your vertex. And then what we talked about with the 2 is that kind of makes it narrow or stretches it out. I never had you graph exactly, so I don't really care about graphing exactly. Just do kind of from there a narrow V coming off of there. We do know it's a solid line this time because it's equal to. And now I have to shade everything outside of the V or inside of the V, whichever one contains the solutions. So check a point again. I'm going to pick 0, 0 again. Plug it in. 2 times 0 is 0. Minus 2 is negative 2. So absolute value of negative 2, that is just 2. So I get 0 is greater than or equal to 2. Is that a true statement? No, it's not a true statement. So 0, 0 is not a solution. It was outside the V. I shouldn't shade anything outside the V then. I should shade the numbers that are inside of the V. All right, thanks for watching.